we hear these words bandied around all the time, a bit like legend. But words like values, vision, mission, purpose, and I think they're all unique in what they are, but they often start blending in to different things. I've been places and they're saying these are our values and our mission. I'm like, oh, they're not quite how it should be. So we've probably all got our own take on it. But from you, Jonny, what is it? What are those things? What do they mean to you? Those values, vision, mission, and purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I think they are the fundamental building blocks of any good business. And I think if you pick up any business book, they'll talk about them. And I think everybody who starts an agency, I'd say most people who start agencies are accidental founders. They're
Yeah,
kind of freelancers and or just building some websites for people, or designing some stuff for people or whatever. And then all of a sudden they kind of realize, I'm starting an agency all of a sudden, and they're hiring people. And, so they're kind of like accidental founders for most of us. I was. So, I think it's pretty normal. And you kind of have to, I guess, learn on the job. You're throwing yourself off a cliff and building the plane on the way down most of the time, when you're growing an agency. And I think it's one of those things that most founders know about. They've listened to webinars like this, and they've learned that actually, a business has a good vision. But I think it's really hard to actually implement those things, and I think that's really the fundamental crux of it. Is that most of the agencies that I ever go into do struggle to set
yeah,
something that is real, right? And that's the game. This isn't just an exercise, logical exercise that sort of like you can tick a box and be done with it. This is something that has to be meaningful, and actually has to have value itself. So that's the basis of it, really.
yeah. Okay. And when, for me, it's the values are the key thing. You've got the vision, the mission, and the purpose, but for me, it's the values that drive all of that. And we have quite strong values in the agency works. We got our team together and said, how do you want to work? What type of clients do you want to work with? How do you want to be seen? How do you want to talk? What's your tone of voice? So for us, the values almost become our everyday behaviors of how we operate across the agency. Why do you think it's so important for agencies to have those values? I see lots of agencies that claim to have them, but if the P&L's a bit down, they'll take work on from clients that wouldn't fit their values. So for you, working with lots of agencies and helping them grow, what's key to those values helping in that growth trajectory and being successful?
Yeah, I think values are. It's a funny one. So, I've got a bit of a narrative around this, right? Because the whole concept of company values has always annoyed me. Companies are just a piece of paper at company's house or some other register, whatever country you're from, right? So, like values and companies aren't a human being. So to say a company has values doesn't ever ring true to me, and it kind of is misleading from the start. So I think, really what we're talking about here as well, and the word values actually, I think, puts people off the path. So I think the reality is that what you're actually saying is, I value this behavior.
Yep.
And I think when you have what most people consider company values, what you're saying is that we are people who value certain behaviors. We all value similar behaviors, and that collective behavior ultimately is our culture, right? And so that's the way I think about company values. So it's a kind of slight process to look like process to get your mind into that. But that's really what we're talking about, when we talk about culture. But values ultimately do define your culture, and the whole point of having a culture and an agreed set of behaviours that you value is that you can become more predictable as an organisation. So there is immediately more, or certainly less fear in the agency. There's more confidence that people are backing you. This is the sort of like classic team dynamic, right? Is that they work better when there is that trust. And I think when you can predict people, it makes a massive difference. Predict how people are going to behave is a massive difference. So, but also I think it's the foundation layer of your brand as well.
Yep.
So you can you know, branding itself is, you know, cattle, whatever, but that doesn't mean anything. Really what a brand is living that ethos and having a way of being. A brand means something, and that is fundamentally that this is how this, you know, this particular brand behaves. And I think that's the other thing, is it's so important to get the values right. But as you said, actually, Jay, you know, the thing that I always focus on with agencies is ultimately the two pipelines, right? You've got a pipeline of work coming in that you in the door to do, and they have clients and people attached to them, and then you have a pipeline of people coming in to do that work, and they're the two pipelines, right, that you manage, and they're full of people, and those people have values too, and certain sets of behaviours, and you've got to make good choices about the behaviours. If you value the behaviours, then fundamentally you've got to be able to create choice in those two pipelines, so that you're bringing people in that are similar or value the kind of behaviors that you have within your business. If they don't value those behaviors, then they're not going to value you as a business, and the relationship will always be sort of client supplier rather than partnership and whatever. So, and same with the people coming in. If you allow just anybody in the door and don't hire first on values, then you're going to end up with a real, like, a very strange culture. It won't be a deliberately designed culture. It will just kind of be a vacuum that will be filled with whoever. So then this is what a lot of businesses face when they're scaling quite quickly as well, is that, you know, we just got to hire people. And so you make compromises, and then you end up losing your culture and becoming, you know, a bit soulless. You know, so you just have corporate policies that define behavior rather than the people that you're hiring.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think a lot of agencies do struggle with that. They grow, they bring clients in. We need people. We've got a shortage of people. Do they fit? Not really, but they'll do a job. And then all of a sudden that client might drop off their revenue. Oh, we've got a bit of a revenue gap. Well, there's a company over here that wants us to do some work. Do they fit? Not really. And very quickly you've got that imbalance of clients not fitting your values, people not fitting your values, and the agency starts to feel not the place you wanted to create as an owner. So I've seen it in play.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I think the most important thing when I'm working with founders is, you know, you can't sit down and have a logical exercise of what values we care about. I mean, because they're hard to change in people. And that starts with the founder, because they have a set of, you know, behaviors that they value themselves, because they live their life. They're a human being. They're consequence of, you know, their environment and everything else that they've got to this point. So it always starts with, well, what do you value? What do you care about? And I think that's the journey that I go on with a lot of founders, is bringing them. It's kind of knowing thyself. You know, if you start to really know yourself and know what you value, and it doesn't really matter what sort of set of values you have, as long as they're good, like, you know, as long as they're friendly and nice, and not, you know, I value dominance or something. But, you know, I don't work with evil villains, but, you know, but fundamentally, you know, people value lots of different things, you know, and if we can understand, you know, what those core things are that somebody values, then they should become the company values, because without a leader and a leadership team that lives those values, demonstrates those values, hires and fires, rewards on those values on a almost daily basis, then those values are really meaningless. You know, they're just the acrylic on the wall. You know, they're in a deck somewhere that comes out once a year. No one can ever remember them. You know, it's one of those things. So, you know, it doesn't really matter. So it has to come from the soul, really. And this is often what I find, you know, setting vision as well, is that a lot of the time it's kind of a tick box exercise. It's a logical exercise to go, oh, we need to sort out our company values. And it's just another thing on the list to do. And that's not where it comes from.
So it sounds like you know, you start with the values as the owner. What do I value? How do I want to be perceived? How does my company want to be perceived out there in the marketplace? What type of clients I want to work with? You try to build a team that has similar values, and that starts defining your culture. And then I think on this, you touched on it there, vision. You know, you see these missions, visions, they're thrown around the landscape. They often start sounding pretty similar, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, someone's gone, right, mission statement, Google, how to do a mission statement, right, how to do a vision statement. And the sort of one buzzword swap for another and cut and pasted in, stuck
Yeah.
on the website. So for you, how, once you've done that vision bit, how do you start defining what those missions and those visions are? Because they're extensions of that values and the course you're creating, right?
Yeah, I've spoken to hundreds of CEOs about vision and what it really means to them. And you know, I go through this process so often with agency founders, and I've obviously been through it myself multiple times, running multiple agencies myself. So and there's always a process that people go through, right? And it starts off in this kind of logical place where most people's vision is from a Google search, right? They turn around and they start off and they say, how do I write a company vision, right? Because we all do this, right? We all learn on the fly and we all need inspiration and all the rest of it. So, but the problem is if you do that, there's like 500 websites out there that will say this is what a good company vision looks like. Now, I've read not all of them, but I've read loads of them. And actually, you know, it doesn't really make much sense because they all end up with the same, which is, I want to be the best business and this size and scale and whatever. And I don't agree with any of that. I think a vision needs to be more motivating and it needs to be more from the heart. The problem is that people try and make a vision statement work too hard. It doesn't need to be a mission, a purpose, and a strategy. It doesn't need to be that, right? It's absolutely fine. A vision really is a destination. And that can manifest itself in many different ways. You know, you've got to add that bit of poetry to your business because that's where the soul comes from. And a really motivating vision statement is not we want to be the best or whatever, because as you say, they're all the same, right? And we all want to be the best and we all want to
They're
do this.
also
We
not
all want to
measurable, are they?
transform the world.
Yeah, they're also not measurable. We want to be the best. How do you measure if you're the best?
Yeah. We want to be £10 million revenue. Okay, I mean, but great. I mean, good for you. But I mean, that's more of a shareholder vision, like,
Yeah,
you know, and I do separate those things because no one's motivated by that. And so I think that's the game people have got to play is really understanding what the world looks like when their agency has grown or their business has grown. And that's the, you know, what does this feel like? You know, let's try and describe it. Let's try and be a bit poetic about how we want to change the world. And then you can kind of work back from there and create something that makes sense, you know, that is motivating. And again, don't make that vision work too hard. It doesn't have to do everything. You don't have to do a vision statement and memorize it. You know, it should be fun. It should be simple. You know, probably the best one I've ever worked on is with one of the agencies I work with, Sugar Creative, and their vision statement and their brand essence and their mission and purpose was all the same, which was create wonder. That's it, right? They're a beautiful XR agency that do amazing stuff. And funnily enough, their strategy was the simplest strategy I've ever worked on, which is working brilliantly, which was snuggle up to big brands, right? And they've partnered with, you know, Ubisoft and Meta and Apple, Paramount, you name it. You know, they're Qualcomm, they're snuggled up to all the biggest brands in AR, VR, and the strategy is working brilliantly. So none of this has to be that complicated, but it has to be simple and motivating to everyone around you.
So why do you think agencies, and I think they genuinely do, and not just agencies, businesses in general, why do you think business in general get stuck when it comes to creating a vision? And is there some hints, tips that you say, look at this process. This is how you actually plan to achieve this, rather
Yeah.
than Googling vision statement?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is the vision, people will Google, you know, how do you write a vision? And they'll see all these things and they'll write something and go, oh, it doesn't really fit. It's not very good. You know, and then they'll, you know, try something abstract and their entire team will go, I don't know what it means. And they'll go back to the drawing board. And then they'll Google, you know, what's Apple's vision? You know, what was Apple's vision? And try and write something like that. And none of that's appropriate, right? So it gets really stuck. And I think it's the same with values and it's the same with vision, and it's the same with kind of a lot of areas of setting up a business as a founder. is it's kind of what state you're in and what you're really thinking about. Because, you know, when you sort of boil down most human beings to really what they care about, you know, it's kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, survival is the first one, and most people, they start an agency and they continue running an agency with the concept of their income paying the bills is the same as the asset they're building. And that's something that you need to get out of your head pretty quickly, I think. If you want to scale an agency properly, you need to disassociate yourself and look at it as an asset that you're building. And part of that building a successful asset is having brilliant people. I put on a LinkedIn post the other day. I think in LinkedIn posts now, it's really, really sad, but you know, your customer experience will never be better than your employee experience. And you know, I think this is where, when people are sort of setting a vision or ambition for themselves, then you know, it can become quite selfish. And it's okay to be selfish. It's okay to say, actually, I want to make money out of this, or you know, I want to do this because, you know, for my ego, I want to prove to the world that I've done something, you know, and achieved something. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know, absolutely not. Like, too much ego, yeah, absolutely, there's something wrong with that. And but too little ego, there's something wrong with that as well. You know, you need a bit of ego. That's totally normal and totally healthy. But I think, you know, what you have to do is, when you're setting a vision or your values or any mission, purpose, anything like that, or even a strategy, certainly your sort of even higher level philosophy about why you're starting a business in the first place, I think, you know, yes, start off from that, you know, selfish, needy place, but realize that's more of kind of you as a shareholder and having a shareholder vision. And then you've got to step out of that, because the layer around that is thinking about, you know, others, you know, thinking about, first of all, your employees and your clients, because, you know, what does it really mean to them? But you know, a lot of people step right out of that to, you know, what do we mean to the world? You know, we're running through the world as a business, and you know, what we're leaving behind us, is it a trail of trees or happy people, or you know, people that have, you know, learned amazing skills, or are we leaving destruction and pollution and sad people? I think these are kind of decisions that you have to make as a business in terms of what you're doing and why you want to do it, and ultimately what I guess your legacy will be. I'm not a big believer in legacy anyway, but you know, like, it does mean something, you know, in terms of the impact you're having. So I think if you can get out of the just immediate, like, logical world and get out of the kind of immediate selfish world and get it, then you kind of reboot your state a little bit and start thinking a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, and a little bit more considerately. Then all of a sudden, the kind of all that energy, motivation, creativity you've got around vision and values and strategies and missions and what you want to do and the markets you want to hit and things like that start to become a bit more relevant. It's not inside out, it's more kind of outside in thinking, and that's when you start coming up with these statements that people go, I really like that, you know, that really means something to me. Because you've got to be saying things as an agency founder, like, or doing anything really, you are pushing out to the world, you know, really what people want to hear. But it's, as long as you want to hear it too, then it's all good. But if you just push out what you want to hear, then no one really cares, because it's the whole what's in it for me thing, you know. And you've got to make it, you know, something's got to be in it for everybody, and that's when you start getting a bit more traction and a bit more people following you, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. So stand back, don't look at it as, you know, this is an extension of my salary, but you know, if I was an owner in a business of this size, this is what my salary would be. But what am I doing in creating this asset? And everything around this asset, from the values to the vision to the mission, should be about that growing within your own values. It's
Yeah,
basically what you're saying, isn't it? Okay.
yeah.
I mean, some great stuff come out of that. I love that. Poetry to your business. I feel like that should be a line in a song somewhere. I love it. I love that. That's great. That's great. Well, can you believe
I heard that. I just a credit. I heard that yesterday. I was having a curry up at Dishoom in Covent Garden with Ketten from Amovio, and it's something his dad always said to him. And I just thought that was
lovely.
the best thing I've ever
It is
heard.
poetry.
It's going on my wall.
I love it.
It's
And I do like that. I like that. Yeah, I can't believe it's 9:52. Like, we've got a few minutes left. So I've taken poetry to your business away from there. I love it. We always ask at the end sort of a one final question, one final statement that you could say to all the A game people on here today, what's one bit of advice you'd give away, take away, that they could go back to their business and start thinking about, or even start implementing? What would that be, Jonny? What would you give the guys on this webinar?
I think there's probably the simplest thing is don't be boring.
Yeah.
And have fun. If you're not having fun, then no one else will have fun. So you've got to be doing things that you find fun, and that's the passion and the love for doing something, whether it's creativity or technology or whatever it is. I think do something that's fun, and everyone will want to do it with you.
That's great. It's so the old do something you love and you'll never work again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I love it.
absolutely.
Jonny, it's been an absolute pleasure.